Hey, what's up guys? My name is Jedith, and boy, is it ever an exciting day for Mythic Plus. We got some amazing changes in a blue post today that, honestly, I wasn't expecting. Mythic Plus was looking grim going into Season 2. There was a lot of discussion, conversation, some constructive, some not, how Mythic Plus needs to change, and how bad Explosive was. So many different opinions, and it was just an absolute mess. But today, we got some great news coming our way. There was a blue post here. I will put a link to this in the description of this video. I'm not going to read every word here for you. You guys are all capable of reading. But what I will do is summarize it the best I can so you guys can basically just get the gist of what's happening here. The first takeaway from this is that the key level affix introductions have changed. So instead of happening where they were before, I think at like 4 and 7, it's now been changed to 7 and 14. So at Keystone level 7, we're going to be getting our periodical effects. So those are Afflicted, Incorporeal, Volcanic, Entangling, and Storming. And then at 14, we'll be getting our on-death affixes, which are Spiteful, Raging, Bursting, Bolstering, and Sanguine. So that is a really good change. I fully approve of that. I think it eases people into Mythic Plus a lot better. It leaves more room at the start for people to really get their toes wet. And as you're going into you start getting to level 7, you get these periodic affixes. This really it eases you into it, right? And then at 14, that's when you start getting the scary stuff like Spiteful, Bursting. So I really like this. I'm excited to see how this feels. Truthfully, it's not going to affect me, and probably not going to affect a lot of you, because a lot of us just jump right into plus 15s or around that area. So we won't really feel this, but I think this is a great change for the lower end of Mythic Plus. Fix updates. Essentially, they have removed Explosive. They tried to make it work, guys. They tried. They had many different variations, many changes, many ideas to try to make it work, and it just didn't work. We couldn't find anything that the community would approve of, which I totally understand. Explosive sucks. So they are retiring Explosive for Dragonflight Season 2, and it's being replaced with Volcanic. I am totally fine with this. I don't mind Volcanic, but then again, I'm a melee player, so I don't have to deal with it interrupting my spellcasts as much as our, Warlock neighbors. I don't mind Volcanic. I don't think casters mind Volcanic all that much either. It's not the worst one out there. So let's talk about Explosive. Let's step back a bit. So what they tried to do with Explosive first was they changed it to have more health, which would, in theory, make it more of a group effort, right? Because previously they had so little health that they could be one-shot. So the most cost-effective GCD to give up to kill those explosives was a healer, because they could just, use their whatever instant cast spell, and they would one-shot the explosive and take care of it. So what they tried to do was they tried to increase the health significantly to make it more of a group effort, and it scaled with dungeon level. So the problem with that was because they already increased the overall amount of health with it, then it was scaling up with dungeon level, and at the higher keys like 20 and up, the HP would have just scaled to an unrealistic amount. And because it was scaling up so high, the play would have been to just ignore them. So you would ignore the explosives, let them explode, and whose job is it then to deal with the fallout of that? The healers. So there really wasn't a way to balance it where we could find a way that it wouldn't just fall on the shoulders of the healers. Side note with that too, I just want to mention that there were some classes out there that were having issues hitting the explosive orbs. The way that the orbs were coded, they were coded as totems. So if you've ever tried to, do PvP, you're fighting a shaman and you're trying to kill its totems, you might notice that some of your AoE abilities just aren't hitting it. For me, for example, I'm a Havoc Demon Hunter, so trying to do things like I-Beam or Blade Dance, they just wouldn't put damage into the orbs, which is problematic, right? Because then you have a situation where certain classes are better for that affix than others, and that affects the probability of you getting invited to a key that week. It just wasn't healthy. Yeah, that was a problem. There was definitely a problem. And yeah, I'm glad we don't have to deal with that problem now because they've gotten rid of explosive. But that being said, I think we will be revisiting this problem once people start running Brackenhide Hollow some more, and we're faced with some totems that we have to take care of. Let's move on to Incorporeal. So this one, what they did was the incorporeal beings now fade away when combat with non-incorporeal beings has ended. I have trouble saying that word. This is a fantastic change. So what would happen before is you would be fighting a pack of mobs. The incorporeal ghosty boys would spawn, and even though you've killed the pack that you were fighting, they would stick around because they're doing their thing, right? They're casting their spells, and you have to stun them and whatever. So that would keep you in combat, and obviously that's never a good thing because it just gets in the way of a lot of things, right? You might not be able to chain pull, or you might need to, invis and go somewhere after that pack you just fought, or your healer needs to drink to get mana. Or, an example that isn't really relevant to us now, but was in the past in Shadowlands, in Mists of Tyrna Scythe, staying in combat after you killed the pack you were working on would interfere with you moving through the maze. So there's a lot of weird things that would happen being stuck in combat like that. So I'm very, very happy that they've changed this. This is great. And I think it does kind of add a little bit of extra counterplay to this affix, because now it allows you to make quick calls on whether you need to waste a GCD to deal with the incorporeals. Like if you need to waste a stun or a CC or whatever to take care of it, or if you can just leave it and know that you're going to kill whatever you're fighting before that cast goes off, and then it's going to despawn. I still think that too many of these are able to spawn at once. People are still reporting you can have up to 4 of them at a time. They spawn in groups of 2 sometimes, and you can have 2 groups of 2. So having 4 at a time is really hard to deal with, especially because things like AoE stuns, so Chaos Nova doesn't work against them. You have to use direct crowd control. So things like spammable CC, so polymorph, hibernate, you know what I mean, things like that. So we'll have to see how this works out in the testing, but I do think that this is a step in the right direction, and I'm happy with this change. Now, Entangling. They made some changes to Entangling, so Entangling snare effect has been reduced to 30%, it was 50%. This is decent. Nice little reduction there. Entangling now has a visual indicating the maximum range of the vine. I think this is a incredible addition to this affix, and not just because I'm biased, because I actually suggested this to them directly, but I do think this is a really good thing that's going to help a lot of people. So if you're not sure what this means, when the Entangling spawns on you, you then have a vine from a point, basically snaring you, and you have to move 10 yards to snap the vine to free yourself of the snare. If you don't do that, you get stunned. So what essentially this is going to do is it's going to put a circle, and the middle of the point is where the vine spawns. There's a circle around that point, and that circle is the limits of 10 yards. So you can see just by looking at it, going outside of the circle is as far as I need to go to snap these vines. And I think, in my opinion, this gives you more of an indication of where you should be moving to, especially if you're using dash or blink movement abilities. It allows you to make better judgment calls. So I'm excited for that as a Havoc Demon Hunter. Yeah, I think this is a great change. Happy that they listened to me, and I'm sure I'm not the only one that suggested it, but I do know that I sent this directly to the ears that were listening. Okay, so the other thing they added was the distinct sound cue when applied to players. Now, we don't know what this is yet. We haven't been able to get on and test it. That's going to be happening this weekend. But again, I do think this is a great thing to add. The more things that you can do to add into the game that make it apparent that this affix is affecting you, the better. You know me, you might not know me, but I use a lot of sound cues with my weak auras. For practically anything I can, there's some type of sound cue for it, because I just find I'm an auditory guy. I went to school for music, so sound cues and stuff like that really work for me. It is practically useless though for those people who do play with their game sound off, but nonetheless, it's something to put in place to make the affix just that much more accessible and easier. And it does kind of reduce the necessity to use a weak aura, but I'm sure we're all still going to have one. Entangling seems to be pretty tame now, and I'm actually content with it. Again, we're going to have to test it, but I think this is in a much better spot than when we initially were introduced to this. The next one is Afflicted. So Afflicted Soul's health no longer scales after Keystone level 20. This is fantastic. I was worried about this one. So the way that you would deal with these is you would either dispel them, so, you know, cleanse magic, cleanse disease, poison, whatever, or you would heal them up to full. So what would happen was previously you would go up higher and higher in the keys, and the health pool that you would have to heal to get rid of these afflicted mobs would go up and up and up with the key level, right? So eventually, just like the other fix we spoke about, at a certain point, it gets to a number that's just not practical, and it's almost impossible to heal. Or if you are trying to heal it, you're putting 4 or 5 GCDs into healing this thing, and it still doesn't, it's not enough. And then you've not only failed the affix, but you've also wasted a handful of GCDs trying to do it. So it wasn't practical. So if that was the case, you were then forced to dispel to deal with them. And the limitations this caused, obviously, caused some major problems at the higher level of keys, because it's essentially cutting the affix in half and only allowing you to deal with it in one of the ways that it was intended to be dealt with at a higher key level. And then the lower key levels, you could just heal it, and it would be not a problem, because then you don't have to waste your dispels or whatever. So I'm hoping that the plus 20 that they've capped it at is kind of in the right range, where they still don't have so much health. So you still have the choice to either dispel or heal. Obviously, you're going to choose which one to use in that situation based on whatever the circumstance you're in, whether you have to use your dispels on the actual pack that you're fighting or not. There's a bunch of different factors, but at least, hopefully, this still gives us the choice. So let's move on to Spiteful. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. I have a strong hatred for Spiteful. I was really hoping that they would remove this when I heard that they were revamping the Mythic Plus affixes going to Season 2. They can make any change they want to this, but I'm still going to hate it, and nobody can change my mind. But if they were to make any changes, aside from deleting it completely, I think this is headed in the right direction. So 10% damage reduction to their melee attacks, and health and damage no longer scales after Keystone level 20, just like Afflicted. So see, this is a tough one. I don't think 10% damage reduction is enough, especially at higher key levels where you're not only getting one shot, right, but you're getting overkilled by a substantial amount. And I don't think a 10% reduction is going to help that. This does make it easier for lower key levels, though. Obviously, I think beginner players in lower level keys are more prone to getting hit by these Spitefuls because, maybe they're just not aware that they're going to be spawning, or their group isn't doing anything to deal with them in terms of like CC or slowing them or stunning or whatever. There's a higher probability in lower level keys to be hit by these. At the higher level, obviously, you should be a bit more aware of them. But I fall victim to these a lot. I'm not going to lie. So I don't know. I think stopping scaling at 20 is, again, just like Afflicted, hopefully right in that sweet spot where with the 10% reduction, they're not able to just body you twice over with one melee attack. But that's something we'll have to see on testing this weekend. Moving on to Raging. Raging now grants enemies immunity to crowd control effects for 20 seconds upon reaching 30% health remaining. Was 50% increased damage done until defeated. So I think, first of all, I think this is good, but I do have questions. I have 2 questions. Does crowd control effects mean interrupts? Second question is it still soothable by, a druid or a hunter or a rogue, or I don't know who else has it, evoker? So yeah, those are my 2 questions. My thought process here is, so if interrupting is included in this, so they cannot be interrupted, I think the only way that's ever going to fly is if they are still soothable, because then there's a counterplay to it, right? Because a lot of times there are spell casts that happen that, frankly, if you just don't kick them, you're dead. There's like shadow bolt volleys. There's so many different things that, like, if you don't stop those casts, you're dead. Your whole party's dead. So the only way that you can have any means of surviving something like that would be to soothe it, get rid of the raging effect, and then kick the cast. But my fear here is that this kind of sounds like something very similar to Inspiring. So what I'm hoping is that they didn't just copy paste the spell aura from Inspiring, because if they did that, then yes, interrupts are included, which would really suck, but probably still manageable, like I said, if we can soothe them. So we'll have to see. Moving on to Bolstering. So Bolster no longer increases the health of afflicted enemies, was health and damage. So I'm so thankful to hear this. This is a change that needed to happen so long ago, 2 expansions ago, and they finally listened. This is good news, boys. So yeah, it no longer affects the health of affected creatures, because what would happen is it would just consume so much of your timer in a Mythic Plus key. You would spend so much extra time like fighting or kiting a mob who is now like giga strong and has like 4 times the HP that it should. And in Mythic Plus, like, oftentimes a pack of mobs have very unbalanced health pools. So it'll have smaller mobs in it that just die quicker than the main harder mob, like the priority target, and you just can't control it. There's no way. And it ends up being unavoidable lost time in your key on the timer. It's just like, you're doing a bolstering key, it's bolstering week, you can probably add like 10% off your timer, because that's going to be spent, dealing with these bolstered mobs. But now you can just kind of pop defensive cooldowns. Your tank can, if there's a heavily bolstered mob, just pop some cooldowns, or, healer can do whatever and just deal with it. And it opens up the possibility for much larger pulls now, because even if you end up with a huge bolstered mob at the end, you can just like kite it and trust that it will die relatively quickly, compared to what it would before, where you would have this big health pool and then you have to wait for the debuff to fall, or the buff to fall off, and it just wasted a lot of time. So I'm excited for this. This is going to open up a lot of possibilities. I think, like in Freehold, for example, it's not going to be scary to pull big packs together, and like we used to do in BFA, right? We would do some massive pulls in there. They did just do some tuning to Freehold, though, so I'm not sure how they buffed some mobs. They changed, but what they did do is they made a lot of the, I'm getting off topic here, but they made a lot of the spell effects on the ground much more visible in Freehold, which is an A+. They need to do more of that throughout more dungeons. But okay, anyways, moving on from Freehold. The last one here is Sanguine. Sanguine Ichor Puddles now last for 12 seconds, was 20 seconds. So I think this is an okay change. I'm not like over the moon about this one. I think it's mostly just like a slight quality of life change. So here's the thing, right? Like, if something is getting healed by Sanguine, they're probably like unmovable mobs. So not a relevant example going into Season 2, but think the mini-boss before the last boss in Ruby life pools, right? Whether it's in Sanguine for 12 seconds or 20 seconds, that mob is still healing back up to full. An example going into Season 2 that we're going to have to deal with would be the worms in Underrot, the ones that are underground that, spawn when you get near them. Those are not movable, so if you kill things on top of them, you drop Sanguine on them, those things are healing right back up, and there's nothing you can do about it. And like I said, whether it's in that pool for 12 seconds or 20 seconds, it's going to heal back up to full. There's no stopping that. But what this change does do is it reduces the overall clutter on the ground, which is always welcomed, considering we're playing in the expansion of Swirlies at the moment. So very happy with all of these changes. There was something very odd that was found on the PTR as we went into it today. Let me pull it up. So as people logged into the PTR today, when the servers came up, they were surprised to see this. It's an affix that wasn't mentioned in that blue post, which makes you wonder, is it intentional? Is it a scrapped idea? Did they forget about it? What's going on here? Are they still testing it? But essentially it's explosive. It's explosive, except it's the shielding idea that they pitched previously. So this is what they said previously. They said, we are discussing a redesign for the explosive affix to shift responsibility away from healers. The proposed change would cause explosives to instead shield creatures for a percentage of the explosive's remaining health when its cast completes. So it's an orb that spawns, and if you don't kill it, any remaining HP on that orb is then transferred to the mobs as a shield. It's still explosive, guys. It's explosive. It's less annoying, slightly less annoying than the previous explosive, but still, it's something you have to like shift your focus off whatever you're fighting to put damage into, which really sucks. And I would assume this still kind of acts like the totem problem that we spoke about earlier. So I don't want to jump to conclusions yet. This could be just a remnant of an idea that they had that they forgot to take out, that they were testing themselves, and they just, you know, decided against it, but they forgot to remove it from the PTR. Or this is an idea that they're still messing with, they're still toying with it, and we could potentially get this in the future. I don't know where this would work in terms of like, you know, the +7 affixes or the +14, because they're split evenly at the moment. We have 5 and 5, right? So not too sure if it would fit in there, but anyways, these changes today have essentially renewed my faith in Mythic Plus. I am very excited to play Mythic Plus again. It was looking bleak. I was like, oh man, because I have a lot of fun playing Mythic Plus, guys. That's what I did on stream for the majority of my streaming career. I ran Mythic Plus with viewers, and I just had a lot of fun doing it. And this season hasn't been as great, in my opinion. It's been interesting. I've had fun doing it, but there were some things that just didn't quite rub well with me. And then seeing the, you know, proposed changes going into season 2, I was like, oh no. I'm going to be one of those guys who just logs on for their raid and logs off. Does there maybe one Mythic Plus a week just to get that vault slot? I'm glad it didn't come to that. I'm glad it didn't come to that. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. If you haven't subscribed to this YouTube channel, if you're new here, or if you're, you know, lurking from the shadows, please give this YouTube channel a subscription. It's free. You just got to click that button down below and you'll get notified for new videos that I put out. Thank you very much, and I'll catch you next time. Peace.